Greetings, Internet faithful. I'm some guy named Rob from On Your Marks Wrestling, and this is Rob Recaps NXT for April 18th, 2018. We open up the show with a silent graphic in memory of the late great Bruno Sammartino, who passed away at the age of 82. For those of you who are wondering what the big deal is about, just go and look through a couple of the news articles about Bruno Sammartino, and you'll understand why people hold him in such high regard. You know, the combined, I believe, 11 years as WWE champion, the biggest box office draw in professional wrestling throughout the 60s and 70s, sold out Madison Square Garden nearly 200 times in his career. Yeah, when he called, when he was referred to as the living legend, Bruno Sammartino, that's not really all that much in hyperbole. He was just that damn good. We cut back into Full Sail, and we have Mr. and Mrs. Wrestling coming out to open up the show, Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae. And as much as they call him Johnny Wrestling, he's not really much for Johnny Promo. He sounded rough on the mic. He sounded very, I want to say, not really weak, but, when a guy comes back and he just doesn't have that projected confidence in his voice. I don't know what it is about his promo. I don't know. Maybe it was because everybody was kind of talking about Bruno Sammartino backstage because well, actually no, the taping would have happened before that actually. So I don't know what that was all about. I don't know why the promo itself didn't come off. It just came off very awkward, I guess is what I'm trying to get to. And it's kind of taking me a long time to get to my point. Kind of how the promo from Johnny Gargano was. It was very long. It was very kind of repetitive. It just didn't seem to go anywhere for a while. But the long story short, the TLDR of his promo is he's back. He's glad to be rid of Tommaso Ciampa. He now wants to be number one contender for the NXT title. Oh, and later in the show, Candice LeRae will be taking on Selena Vega. And he says that if Andrade Cien Almas tries to get involved, he'll basically take him down as if his name was Tommaso Ciampa, which I thought was a great line. I just wish most of his promo was on that level versus the way it was when he first kind of started and had sort of those awkward first steps out of the gate. We cut from in-ring to the announcer's table where Mauro Ranallo and Percy Watson hype up the match that was just announced for the women, as well as a no disqualification match between Lars Sullivan and Killian Dane, and then let us know that Ricochet will be in action to kick off the night. So Ricochet faced off against Fabian Aigner, I believe is how his name is pronounced. It was okay as matches go. It was very athletic from Ricochet. Aigner looked pretty good. It's hard to say. It's the first time I've ever seen him. Again, I'm still getting used to the whole NXT product and the NXT roster, so I don't really know how good Fabian Aigner is as a wrestler in general, but the match itself came off pretty well. The match features a lot of back and forth. Eventually, we end up with the two of them fighting up at the top rope. Ricochet gets the better of it, finishes the match with the 630 senton, which looks absolutely phenomenal to pick up the win. Following the match, as he's making his way to the back, Kayla Braxton catches up with him, and he talks about how great it is for him to make his debut at Full Sail, how he watched other people come through NXT. I think he name-dropped Bayley and Seth Rollins. I think Sami Zayn was in there. And he says that now it's his turn, that he's here basically to show the world that there is only one Ricochet, which is good because gimmick infringement is a thing. We get a few hype packages. Next in line, War Raiders. We take a look at their debut. We learn that they're going to be in action. We see a promo for EC3. We see a promo for Lars Sullivan hyping his match for later on in the night. Basically, it's sort of a mirror of the promo that Killian Dane had cut a little bit earlier, where he said that Lars Sullivan took away his opportunity, that being for the NXT North American Championship, and now without Sanity by his side, he's going to take everything away from Sullivan. Sullivan, of course, is in sort of his own little darkened stairwell somewhere in the arena, and basically he's just cutting a promo to show that, he's going to show everybody that he's just a freak of nature and that he's going to beat Killian Dane, and it's, I'm going to beat you bad, and no, I'm going to beat you bad, and no, you cost me my title, and no, you cost me my title. It's basically two Big Hoss promos, and it felt a little long, a little too package heavy at that point in the show. Thankfully, we get to the next match, War Raiders defeating Jobber 1 and Jobber 2. I love their finisher. Their finisher is just absolutely fantastic. That sort of belly to back suplex with the leg drop assist. I believe they call it the Fallout. And if I could just take a moment to get off topic, I'm really enjoying this resurgence in tag team wrestling where tag teams have tandem finishers. You see it with the Bar. You see it with the Revival. It's nice to see this with War Machine. You see it with the Authors of Pain. There's nothing worse than having a tag team where the tag team itself, the teamwork is really, really good, but the finisher to the match is just one of the two guys hitting their finishing move that they would have if they were just a singles competitor. Having that tandem tag team finisher really is the cherry on top of a good tag team. That's something that you really want to see, and I'm glad that the War Raiders are keeping in that spirit and keeping that torch burning. Following the match, we cut to the Performance Center, where Shayna Baszler, the new NXT Women's Champion, walks into the women's locker room. It seems the women are having a locker room meeting, and Baszler is late for the meeting. She basically takes over, comes in and says that she's in charge now, this is her locker room, and that people either get in line or get run over because there's nobody to stop her now that Ember Moon is gone. She actually goes up to Ember Moon's spot and rips down Ember Moon's name, puts a Queen of Spades or an Ace of Spades, I can't remember which card it is, but basically puts a playing card there to let everyone know that that is her spot. She is the new queen of the locker room, and that's about it. It was okay as promos go. I know Baszler's promos are not exactly the greatest. They're about as great as the consistency in my pronunciation of her last name, I'm realizing. The production value was rough. It was pretty rough to see it go from in-ring action and everything looking really kind of nice and crisp to this backstage thing where it looks like it was shot either on a cell phone or with a really cheap camera. And I mentioned that last week when they were backstage talking to the Undisputed Era, how it looked like everything was on a cell phone with really, really bad lighting. This was another one of those instances, and it's a little jarring. I'd like to see a little bit more consistency with that sort of thing, but I can't fault the content. We get a couple more hype packages. First one is for Kona Reeves. Apparently, he's changed his look from what I've been told or what I've seen online, and they're basically saying Kona Reeves will be on NXT in a couple of weeks. We then cut to a video that was taken earlier in the day with an interviewer speaking to Pete Dunne, the WWE United Kingdom champion, talking about Roderick Strong and the betrayal that happened at TakeOver New Orleans. The UK champ basically stops. He kind of turns and says he's going to be back in a few weeks. And when he catches up with Roderick Strong, he's basically just going to tear his head off. So you can expect Pete Dunne to be back on NXT television in the next few weeks. Probably, I'm guessing it's going to be after Backlash. Back to the ring, we have our Big Hoss car crash as Lars Sullivan takes on Killian Dane in a no disqualification match. I'm not even going to try and call this. I'm not going to try and call out spots. It was just a big, vicious, Big Hoss type of smash 'em up wrestling match that you would expect from these two guys, especially in light of what happened at the ladder match. The spots that they had weren't quite as entertaining as what happened at the ladder match, so it felt a little more flat. The crowd didn't seem to be quite as into it as they were with the ladder match, but then again, you're talking about a TV taping environment versus a pay-per-view environment on WrestleMania weekend, no less. So yeah, I can understand how that would be a fairly predictable crowd reaction. Overall, the match fairly entertaining. Ends with Lars Sullivan hitting Killian Dane with his finisher onto two chairs for the 3 count. We get a bit of a lingering shot of Killian in the ring as we sort of cut away from this one to a video package on the whole Andrade Cien Almas versus Johnny Gargano program, which had been going on back and forth over the last little while, along with the promises of, if Gargano doesn't win at NXT, which he did not at TakeOver Philadelphia, he would be leaving NXT. And of course, with the reinstatement and the yada, 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 we're basically hyping up the main event of the match, which will come up after we get a promo of the Undisputed Era's Championship photo shoot. It's basically all four of the men are there. And yeah, it's they're basically just hyping up the fact that the Undisputed Era will be back on NXT live next week. It'll be the first time that Adam Cole is coming out to defend his North American Championship. This brings us to the main event of the night as Candice LeRae faces Zelina Vega in what was a fairly entertaining match. It seemed a little strange because from what little I know of these two women, it seems to be that the sort of a good chunk of their offense was performing the guys' moves. So Candice LeRae was doing a lot of Johnny Gargano's moveset, including ending the match with his submission finisher. Zelina Vega seemed to be doing a lot of signature moves that are associated with Andrade Cien Almas. I don't know if they're usually using these movesets because I don't know enough about them, but overall the match was pretty entertaining. I did like the fact that they had the sort of double submission at the end with both Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae putting on the Gargano escape to basically cause both of them to tap out and end the match. The two celebrate in the ring. Johnny gets on the mic again and says that he wants to call out Aleister Black. Aleister Black answers the call and says, if you're looking for the title, next week you'll have it. So I don't know if they're setting up a world title, NXT title match for next week, or if it's just maybe they're just going to have a match between the two of them. It'll be non-title to see if there's any sort of number one contendership or something like that. I don't know. They didn't really specify because the show fades to black, and that is the show that was for NXT. Overall, I found it to be a little bit flat, but maybe it's because it's just a bit of a hangover from the superstar shakeup that's kind of thrown a wet blanket over the week of wrestling. But yeah, it seemed to be there was a little bit less enthusiasm than what I had seen. I've been going back through some of the older NXT shows on the WWE Network to try and get myself caught up a little bit in the storylines, so I'm not too terribly lost for too long a time with all of this. But the episode fell a little bit short of expectation. I guess, obviously the next couple of weeks, they seem to be setting up some major things. So maybe this was just a setup episode for better things that are coming down the road. I guess time will tell. In the meantime, until we meet again, take it easy.